Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Slaggart, and I'm the Associate Director of the Jago Center for Entrepreneurship at the Mendoza College of Business. On behalf of my colleagues in the Jago Center and in the Mendoza College, we'd like to welcome you to our event this evening. I've invited Mike Ferrigno, one of our graduate students in Mendoza, to introduce our guests for this evening. As president of the MBA Venture Capital and Entrepreneurship Club, Mike has devoted countless hours to building a spirit of innovation at Notre Dame. Mike, please join me to welcome Mr. O'Leary.
Thanks, Karen. Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to introduce our guest for this evening, Mr. Kevin O'Leary. O'Leary began his career by founding Special Event Television, an independent production company that produced original sports programming such as The Original Six, Don Cherry's Grapevine, and Bobby Orr and the Hockey Legends. He then founded SoftKey Software Products, which was later called The Learning Company in 1986, which he sold to Mattel in 1999 for $4.2 billion. In 2003, O'Leary co-founded Storage Now, a leading developer of climate-controlled storage facilities, which was acquired in March 2007 for $110 million. In 2007, he became a founding investor and director of Boston-based Stream Global Services, Inc., which was focused on the growing outsourcing businesses services market. Today, O'Leary is the chairman of O'Shares Investments. He is also the founder and chief sommelier of O'Leary Fine Wines, an award-winning wine label, as well as a member of Boston's 107-year-old Hamilton Trust. In addition to Shark Tank, O'Leary is a regular contributor on ABC, CNBC, and CTV, and is a best-selling author of 2 books titled Cold Hard Truth on Men, Women, and Money, and Cold Hard Truth on Family, Kids, and Money. Last but certainly not least, Mr. O'Leary announced last week that he has his sights set on becoming the next Prime Minister of Canada. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kevin O'Leary.
Actually, I was born Terrence Thomas Kevin O'Leary. My dad was Irish, and he loved long names. But when they got me home, everybody realized it was going to be total confusion, because Dad was named Terry too. So the next thing I knew, I was Kevin. 2 years later, my brother Shane came along. My dad was a gregarious Irishman and a great salesman. We had a happy family. Middle class, my parents worked hard. But then at the age of 37, Terry, my dad died, leaving my mother Georgette alone with 2 young kids, and times looked tough. And then as life would have it, things changed. My mother Georgette met George. They fell in love and married. She would spend the rest of her life with this man, and George became my stepfather. He was a young man just graduating college at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, and our whole family moved there. They were wonderful times, but we didn't know what the future would hold. When George finally graduated, he joined the ILO, part of the United Nations, and that's when things went wild. We moved everywhere. We saw the world. Every 2 years, a brand new country. We started in Egypt, France, Japan. Then we lived in Tunisia, Ethiopia, Cyprus, Cambodia, Switzerland. You name it, I've been there. I didn't know it at the time, but living in all these places around the world and actually seeing them had a profound impact on me. Imagine living in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, at the time of Haile Selassie, and actually seeing him long before he became a deity of the Rastafarians, and playing with his lion cubs, or living in Phnom Penh during the time of Prince Sihanouk and his lieutenant, Pol Pot, who would eventually lead the Khmer Rouge and was responsible for a genocide of his own people during the horrific Killing Field campaign in Cambodia. These were remarkable experiences for me and gave me a unique first-hand education on how the world really works. Now, you can read a research report on any place, but actually living and being there is a whole different experience and gives you a huge advantage as an investor. Today, some of my best returns are global. When I graduated from college with a degree in environmental studies and psychology, my dad George said, "Look, you're going to starve to death. You're not going to make any money. Go back to business school." It was great advice. That's exactly what I did. And when I graduated, I started my first company, Special Event Television. We made sports programming for networks, shows like Bobby Orr and the Hockey Legends and The Original Six. It all worked out, and when we sold the company, I took the proceeds and started SoftKey Software Products. Later, after we had moved to Boston and turned it into the Learning Company, we sold it for $4.2 billion. It was a huge experience for all of us that were involved, and it changed the way I looked at being an entrepreneur forever. Today, I believe if you've been successful as an entrepreneur, you owe the next generation a roadmap, not just about your successes, but more importantly about your failures, to help them from not making the same mistake. I've authored 3 books about money and business, and luckily, they've all been bestsellers. I got married to Linda when we both had nothing. We couldn't afford a big wedding, so we had a reception at our apartment afterwards and ordered in pizza for our guests. It was a fun wedding anyways, and we were on a journey. If you're trying to build your own business, you make big sacrifices. When the kids came, we had to work as a team to keep it together. Today, I try and spend as much time with my family as I can to make up for the early days when I was not around. I love to cook, and I'm passionate about O'Leary fine wines. I'm still taking pictures, and I love to collect guitars. And oh yeah, I love to play them too. Like everybody else, I want to be a rock star when I grow up. I spend a lot of time teaching. I tell students, you don't start a business out of greed. It's not about money. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? To set yourself free. The pursuit of entrepreneurship is about freedom and helping others achieve their goals at the same time. Today I'm the chairman of O-Shares exchange-traded funds. I travel the world for our investors looking for opportunities. It's a global enterprise, and I love my work. People are always asking me, why do you keep going? And here's my answer. If you want to help someone, anyone, anywhere in the world, the best thing you can do is create a job for them. Who does that? Entrepreneurs. I'll spend the rest of my days encouraging people to do exactly what I have done. Become an entrepreneur, start a business, and create jobs. There is absolutely nothing in the world more important or noble than that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll tell you what we're going to do today. I want to walk through Shark Tank a little bit, about the making of Shark Tank, now going to its 9th year, obviously a very successful format for many, many reasons. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned about management skills, about presentation, about venture capital from the experiences of that. So I'm going to take a case study. My favorite is a commodity, and we'll look at what happened and understand how Shark Tank works. But also, after 9 years and thousands of pitches, there's a lot to be learned about what to do right and what goes wrong and how you present your ideas to investors. I don't care whether you're, an entrepreneur, a leader, a politician. These lessons matter in terms of your ability to communicate to people. So I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about the experience of having invested in hundreds of companies now, about some skill sets that I've learned. They're actually imperative, but more importantly, what is done incorrectly. Because, I always believe you should pass on, not your successes. You can always bang that drum, but if you know something doesn't work, pass that on to the next generation so they don't make the same mistake. So let's start with Shark Tank. Let me advance some slides here. This show has obviously been phenomenally successful. I want to take a case study and try and prove what's the value of the platform. So in other words, if you take a company you've never heard of that makes a product and then stick it on Shark Tank, does the fact that 10 million people see it a week change its destiny forever? And what's it worth? How do you measure it? And my favorite case for this is to take a commodity, something that anybody can make, and then put it on the Shark Tank platform and measure what happens. So this particular case study is a company called Wicked Good Cupcakes. What's more of a commodity than a cupcake? Milk, water, flour, butter. Anybody can make a cupcake. This particular company came onto the Shark Tank and tried to pitch the sharks to give them money for something anybody can do. And I thought to myself, well, wouldn't this be an interesting deal to isolate 2 things? The value of the platform of Shark Tank, because obviously, if my thinking's right, you're going to take this obscure company out of Cohasset, Massachusetts, make it famous, and sales should go through the roof. But also, what would it be like to watch this particular team go from a company doing $15,000 in sales a month to one doing $1 million and $2 million and $3 million? Could they do it? And so there's 2 lessons to be learned in this. So let's have a look at a couple of minutes of video. We'll look at the deal, how it was structured. This, by the way, is the very first royalty deal ever done on Shark Tank history. And it made me famous, really, because everybody hated royalty deals until now. That's all they want to do. Because this is a good case study. The value of a royalty deal, the equity stays in the hands of the owner. And in a family business, not selling your equity is a wonderful thing because the value of this company has continued to grow. Obviously, no one ever heard of Wicked Good Cupcakes, really the first commodity deal ever done, because the sharks to that date always wanted something proprietary. But the idea was, what's the platform worth? So what actually happens to the company? Sales go from 24,000, they sell about 365,000 right out of the gate. It starts to grow. I get my money back in about 50 days. So, no one saw that coming. Today, this is the #1 selling cupcake FedExed. There's nobody selling more cupcakes. And they've gone into lots of other product lines. They've been able to grow because they never gave up any equity. They pay me 45 cents a jar. My accountant said, "Are you dealing drugs? How come all this cash is coming in every month?" But it shows the very symbiotic relationship. Our interests are totally aligned. I want to do everything I can to grow sales. I have no equity in the business. However, at some point when this gets acquired, probably by a large brand that's in retail, because they're already involved in several deals right now, they'll have to buy out that royalty stream. So there are other structures that work in venture that leave the equity, and particularly a family business like this, aligned. But there's a lot of secrets taught about this particular company in terms of what they've done with the platform. We've grown. We're actually at 43 employees now. So this is the essence of what makes entrepreneurs great. They create jobs. We have commercial kitchens in multiple cities. We have gluten-free commercial kitchens. The brand continues to grow. We're in lots of different product categories. But what's really going on here, and this is the essence of what the secret sauce of Shark Tank is, the #1 challenge of any small business, particularly ones that do e-commerce. This is an e-commerce company. It's a very small amount that they sell in retail. The biggest challenge, and you'll face this in your own lives for sure, is customer acquisition costs. The cost of acquiring a customer online is really high sometimes, because how do you differentiate your product or service from the millions of other products offered online all around the world? And what these two women figured out pretty quickly is if they could somehow stay on television and stay in the ecosphere of network TV and keep their story in the public through every social media platform they could, their customer acquisition cost was zero. 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 Do you know how powerful that is in a business when there is no cost of acquiring the incremental customer? And that's exactly what they did. They continued to stay on network TV. Here they are in 2020, shooting in New York City. Here they are shooting an update, because their story was so compelling for network, they stayed on all the daytime shows. This is a daughter and a mother, slowly building their business, telling their story, keeping it relevant on social media, talking about their trials and tribulations with their customers, getting ever more popular. Here they are in Boston the moment they sold their millionth jar. In case you're counting, that's 450,000 to me. I'm very happy about that. But, of course, we covered it on network television. More free customers, more and more and more. So the whole deal with a small business is to find out how your story can become compelling to your customer and stay in touch with them. These two ladies have become masters of staying on every platform they can find and continuing to tell their story. It's a very successful business now. They've been driving down their costs dramatically, but that actually is the secret of Shark Tank. If you ever get there and you get to pitch to the sharks and they offer you a very aggressive deal, it's because they figured out how valuable they are. If you can just get on the show, that's value. But the real value is to get into the ecosphere where you're followed every single year with an update, because there's such a tremendous interest in the stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the trials and tribulations of these companies going through their journey, that it's incredibly fascinating television and social media. And indeed, most of the sharks have set up their own social media divisions. I have, I think now, 12 terabytes of content of all my companies on a cloud-based server, all categorized and indexed so that anytime there's a story about any one of my 34 companies, we can send content to whatever that platform is about pictures, video, radio, print, whatever it is, to provide them with just more stuff to put out there. Again, always trying to get our costs down in customer acquisition. So that's probably the most interesting aspect of what Shark Tank has done. And you can actually see it by the numbers. If you looked at venture since the 50s and look at the returns on venture capital, the typical Charles River Research, they were the first out of Boston to start doing this. You take 10 companies, you look at it after you've invested after 2 years, 2 are starting to take off and they're working, 6 are living dead. In other words, nothing's happening, but they're not dead yet. You have to keep funding them. And 2 have basically gone bankrupt in the first 24 months. In Shark Tank's case, it looks like we're getting return of capital from 50% of the companies because generally they have 0 customer acquisition costs. Now here's where it gets really interesting and we're going to learn something. After all these years and all these companies and many, 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 many trials and tribulations, both good, bad, and ugly, here's what I've learned, and this is remarkable data for me. Not some of my returns, all of my returns have come from the companies either owned or run by women. Now, why is that? Why is that? Because frankly, I would give money to a goat if I could get a return. I've said that many times. So this is not about, bias or any kind of differentiation by gender. What are women doing in small cap companies that differentiate their outcomes so much? Because remember, this is in multiple geographies, multiple sectors. Many of these CEOs have never met each other, and yet they're getting really high returns. And I'll give you some examples of these companies. You think about what they've learned going through the Shark Tank experience, and let's talk about that first. Because all of them experienced this, and I think this is a good lesson. I want to talk about, if you looked at 1,000 pitches, let's use Shark Tank because the tape exists, and look for any commonalities that existed in these pitches that got them funded. Now, if it's the only thing you remember today about what I'm going to talk about, it's these 3 things, because it turns out this is actually the definition of leadership. But in every case where a company got funded, these 3 things were present. In every case, the entrepreneur was able to articulate the opportunity in 90 seconds or less, and I'd argue 30 seconds is better. The ability to actually explain the opportunity in a very concise period of time ends up being paramount, whether you're an entrepreneur seeking an investment, whether you're a teacher, whether you're running a social charity, whether you're a politician. Communication skills is huge. The ability to sit down here and learn how to communicate with people is absolutely paramount, regardless of what your discipline is. But it's particularly important if you're trying to raise money as an entrepreneur, because this is where you set the tone for why that individual should put capital and put it in harm's way. What is so great about your idea that I'd want to invest in it? 90 seconds or less. Number 2, you have to be able to explain why you're the right person to execute the business plan. This is not a 90-second duration. This can take a lot longer. But if an investor is interested, they start asking you questions about the business model. What's the break-even analysis? How many units do you have to sell before you break even? How big is the market? How fast is it growing? How many competitors do you have? This is very important information. What skill sets do you have that are going to make you and your team able to actually execute this business plan? Have you failed before? Have you ever worked in a competitor? What experience do you have? When you get these 2 right, you can start to feel the interest, particularly in the Shark Tank. It starts to sizzle like an isotope in that room. And by the way, at this point, after 8 years, the sharks don't see the cameras anymore. They've made lots of money in deals. They've been doing it for 8 years. They're competing. Good deals make money, millions of dollars. If you get a good deal on Shark Tank and you hit it right, you make millions of dollars. And we're interested in doing that. You could put 500,000, as I did, or 100,000 in harm's way in the case of something like a group book, and sell it 2 months later for $14 million. That's the biggest exit we've ever had on Shark Tank. But that happens because of the power of what the tank is. So those sharks are fighting now. They're looking to buy a piece of that deal. They don't see the cameras anymore. There's 26 of them. They're competing. The Shark Tank is sizzling because you've got the 2 things done here. Great idea, great executional skills. Now here's where I've seen it blow up. And I teach this in engineering schools every day because this is the killer. This is the one that takes you down. You can feel the air go out of a room like that when you don't know your numbers. If you get through the 100,000 applications to get on Shark Tank, and you're one of the 300 that get to pitch, and you get the first 2 right, and you don't know your numbers, you deserve to burn in hell in perpetuity. And I will personally put you there. Because if you don't know your numbers, get somebody who does. That's the language of business, is to be able to communicate the numbers. These 3, it turns out, are absolutely paramount in any career in business. You have to be able to do this. If you can't, you work very hard to get to that place. This is absolutely present in every deal where a check is written. It doesn't determine the outcome of the business, but it makes sure that you get investors ready to put capital in harm's way. This is Sarah Margolis, one of these CEOs that has been very successful. She runs Honey Fund. She's a Shark Tank deal. I've learned a lot from her. We're going to talk about what I've learned about the women CEOs that have been running these companies and have been successful. There are many of them. But this is really about management skills. The woman here, this is a really interesting company that got on Shark Tank. It took me to the White House 3 times. This is Bottle Breacher. That fellow there, Eli, was a very select operative in the military, did some very crazy stuff. Very, 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 very crazy stuff. And when his wife became pregnant and they had 2 girls, she finally said, "You've got to come home. I can't afford to lose you." And they started this business of taking ordnance, spent 50 millimeter caliber brass shell cases, and turning them into bottle openers, bottle breachers. When they came on Shark Tank and pitched this deal, it was such an emotional moment, so powerful when it got on television, that they did millions in sales. And just that evening, Michelle Obama happened to catch it and fell in love with these 2. And then she invited us to the White House, not once, but 3 times, because she was very interested in having veterans start their own businesses. This is a phenomenally successful business. They make pens and all kinds of things out of spent ordnance now. But it's the team here. His wife she spent, while he was on, I think, 7 tours of duty, she put herself through business school, just so she could operate this business that they hope to get growing. But the point is, what are the skill sets these women are doing to get returns? This is a phenomenally successful business. I think I've got all my money back in 18 months on this thing. It's been great. So let's talk about these skill sets. Some of these may sound obvious, but the women that are running these businesses that have provided all the returns are doing all of these things. Now, a clear line of command is sounds military in nature, but when you start a small business, and the smallest is $5 million in my portfolio, the biggest is $480 million, that's Sarah Margolis at Honey Fund. So these lessons come from all private companies, and the ones that are returning capital generally have these themes inherent in them. One of the things I found with women versus men, time management skills. You ever heard that comment, want something done, give it to a busy mother? When you meet women CEOs, they allocate their employees' times very, very efficiently, and their own. But here's the one that really caught me and started me thinking about this. When you looked at across these 30 companies who set goals, because I always ask for what's the quarterly target on revenue, consistently, the ones run by women, targets were much lower, much more pragmatic in a way, and were achieved 95% of the time. Where for the men, they weren't achieved even 50. The guys tended to set these incredibly high targets, hoping that maybe we'd get there half of the way, or maybe once in a while we'd get lucky and hit it. Now, what's really going on there? If you achieve in a small company your goal every quarter, the morale of the team starts to grow. That's what happens. Employee turnover lowers. Productivity goes up. When you don't have turnover, you're not training people a second time as you're growing the business. So it turns out, if you're setting goals that are lower but achieved more often, you're actually doing yourself a huge favor. This is a commonality amongst the women CEOs. They'd sit down and say to themselves, okay, what can I get this quarter? What's realistic? And they just keep getting it quarter after quarter after quarter. Turnover, 0. Nobody likes to leave a team that's succeeding. That's what I found was so fascinating, because now when we get these companies together, I say, look at this. Stop setting goals you never hit and start making ones that are achievable and start to realize that this is actually how you keep a team together, something you should think about. Here's some other tricks of the trade. Some other attributes that I found in these are women that don't really know each other, just looking at how they're running their businesses. Be accessible. I want to show you something. One of the women that taught me this lesson. I have 2 phones here, okay? This is an old tech BlackBerry, and I write a lot of emails on it because I love the keyboard. And this has another one of my companies, a sticker called Love Pop, 3-dimensional cards. But this phone, only my family has the number, my immediate family. Now, why do I do this? So it turns out if you start a company and you tell your employees, I'm going to give you my personal number, and I want you to call me anytime there's a problem. I don't need to hear about the successes, I know that. But if we're having trouble out in the field with a customer, call me. If we've got a manufacturing issue in China, or wherever we're manufacturing, call me. When you actually make yourself accessible, in the case of this phone, where I think probably thousands of people have this number now, because I do the same for any company I'm invested in, only 5 people have this number. It rings all the time. My daughter wants more money. The phone rings. That's what happens. This never rings. The point she was making was when you show respect and give accessibility to your employees, you create a bond. It's respect. You're showing that you're willing to invest your time in them, and you give them something very coveted, direct access. Many very successful CEO and S&P 500 companies do this, because they know if the phone rings, it's a big deal. No one's going to call you unless it's a real problem. You don't need to hear the good news. You want to hear the bad news. The accessibility metric is a really interesting one for you to think about for the rest of your career. If you want to be a leader, be accessible to the people you're leading. They will respect you for it, and you create an invisible bond that ends up lasting a long, long time. When you hit 5 million in sales, this is the first time I start to see trouble in my CEOs. 5 million you can do with a 7-man team, no problem. When you get from 5 to 10, it's impossible to do it on your own. You can't make all the decisions anymore. And that's when you find out if your CEO is able to go to the next level, where they start to delegate. Delegation is when you actually take risk with people, setting goals for 90-day periods and letting them run free, and you don't get in their way. You don't stick your nose in their business. You agree on a target, whatever it is, manufacturing, cutting costs, sales growth, whatever, and you let them go do it. For those that make it, you increase the targets, or you move them up the organization. For those that don't, out behind the barn, you know what you have to do. That's when you start changing your organization, when you start to lead by delegating. It turns out very few CEOs can make this change. They just can't let go, and they fail. Their businesses stall out at $5 million, and the reason is they can't delegate. Something for you to remember for the rest of your lives. If you really want to build a company and you want to stay in control of it, you better get used to this now. Learn how to let go and start trusting people. It turns out women CEOs that have gone past 25 million have been able to do this. This is an ego problem for many people. And when you delegate, you do not get in their way. You let them either succeed or fail on a quarterly basis or whatever time period you put on it. Time management skills in delegations turn out to be very important. You've now delegated the major task for every quarter, and that allows you as a CEO to start thinking about strategy and path. This is where you start to rise to be a real leader in a business. You're always pivoting, thinking what's going to happen next, because your machine is running, your team is working, but you have to be a strategic thinker and think, what's going to hit us next? What's my next opportunity? What's my biggest risk? Because that's the definition of leadership, to carve that path so that everybody else that's working hard, remember, you set their goals, you delegated them, now you have to think ahead, you have to sail that ship. You have to be, in the classic case of the hockey analogy, knowing where the puck is going to be next. That is absolutely leadership. Another area where I see people fail. They're just doing the same thing and over and over again. In the case of Wicked Good Cupcakes, Tracy, the mother, is constantly dreaming up new products in new markets. And her husband, who actually left from Fidelity, part of the family, is always saying, no, 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 that's too expensive or we can't do it. And they battle it out together. But she's got the vision to grow, and she has been very successful with the majority of her strategies. This sounds obvious. You can't believe how many people make this mistake. There's a great study that goes like this. Take any company in the bottom 2 quartiles, buy it, gain control, do not change anything in what the company does. This is actually a private equity strategy. Do not put any money into R&D. Don't put any money into advertising. All you do is move it from the bottom quartile to the second or first in customer service. Takes you about 3 years. Then you raise prices 15%. Guess what happens? You make a ton of money. It turns out that service is the glue that bonds you with your customer all of the time. People are willing to take a tremendous amount of pain rather than give up good service. And there's a great example, and I see many laptops in this room. Why would you pay 3 times more for an Apple laptop than a Windows machine? Why? It does exactly the same thing, and yet their margins are obscene. Everybody else is competing in the Windows-based laptop. You can buy one for $280 now, and you're still spending $1,800 for the latest Mac laptop. Why? The brand means customer service. If you ever have a problem with Apple, you walk into one of their stores and they fix it for you, and you pay an obscene amount of money for that, but you don't care. They are the best lesson on earth to watch how that manifests itself. And that's such a lesson learned, because there's so many opportunities for you in the future to find a company where all you have to do is fix its customer service and lever yourself wildly to the upside, because customer service really, really matters. I talked about technology. The problem with technology now, the entry cost is so low that your competitors are always buying the best CRM, the best cloud service, the best of whatever it is they need. And you have to keep pace. In the case of small companies today, the number one weapon is social media. To engage social media properly, you have to have production skills, because just posting stuff now with low production value gets you no traction. Understanding how to make that 30-second video or that 45-second series of still images or that message means you have to bring a team in place and have a huge database of content, because you have to pump it out every day. And so cloud services do this. There's products that we use. I'll give you some examples. We have massive, massive amounts of data on video service products like Vimeo, so that every company has hours and hours of video sitting there that we can chop up and serve up anytime we need it. We use another product called Zenfolio for still images. It used to be a wedding planning product that's now used in social media. All of these products are cloud-based, and they can be served up to all of the 34 companies, and we do that every day. 12 terabytes now of content using this technology that you could have never done before. So when a company like Bottle Breacher gets onto a daytime show on a network or somewhere, we're able to provide them in seconds 20 minutes of video that they can cut from. Or we could even produce a 30-second segment for them. We have a whole team that does that, and we pound out thousands of pieces of information on Facebook. We snap it out. We stick it on one of the ones that big surprise for us with LinkedIn is ended up being a very big influencer in small businesses. So these are all weapons that you've got to use, but it's really technology. Then this one's a little more controversial. When I teach business in business schools, primarily in engineers, I always talk about this as the dark side of business. In business, there are winners and losers. This is not kumbaya. When you go into a market, you're trying to either grow it, but you're definitely stealing share from somebody, and they don't want to lose their share. It is a war. It's not a social exercise. You can't save the world. The DNA of a business was never designed to do that. It services 3 constituents. You should never forget this. Your customers, your employees, and your shareholders. The minute you take money from an investor, as an entrepreneur, you will never be number one again, ever in your life. Ever. You will always be servicing three masters: your customers, your employees, and your shareholders. Now, when somebody comes to you and says, but wait, can't we save the baby whales too? That's the dilemma we're having in business today. When all of a sudden business has been vilified. The last 8 years has been horrible. Wall Street's not an evil place. It's the infrastructure of what makes the economy work. Bankers aren't bad people. They provide for what works everywhere around the world, the currency of trade. And yet, this is a huge issue when we talk about it in society. But if you march off into the world out of this business school with this brand you have, which is incredible, and you forget that your primary service is to customers, employees, and shareholders, and you get lost thinking that your job is to save the world, you will fail. You will lose the war and be a casualty. It doesn't mean you can't have a social mission. But let me give you an example of a classic case. A sock company on Shark Tank. I won't mention their name. They came out and said, we're the sock company with a social mission. Every time you buy a pair from us, we give a pair away for free. That sounds wonderful. The problem is, if you're making $40,000 a year and you go into Walmart and you're feeding 3 kids, you want the best pair of socks at the lowest price you can get. You're worried about your family and their feet. You're not thinking about the free pair you're giving away. It's very, very hard to sell a social mission when you have to get the best product at the lowest price to the customers all the time. And my answer to this is very simple. If you as a shareholder have a social mission, and my mother taught me this years ago, you owe to give some back because it's good karma. That's what it is. You, after you've returned capital to your shareholders, you've taken care of your employees and all your customers, you can do whatever you want with your profits. But don't make the assumption that all your customers, employees, and shareholders want you to make social decisions for them. A little controversial? Yes. But I'm telling you, you should think about this, because in the end, you'll be competing in a war of companies all around the world. I want to show you something as I leave. You should look at this. Just the size of these markets now. This is Shanghai in 1990. This is always on my mind. Always on my mind as I watch capital flows and the competition going on globally. And the issue we're having in every country as nationalism is starting to rise and people are talking about tariffs again. Look at this. Same place a decade later. Do you have any idea how much capital that takes? These guys are going to be bigger than America in 20 years in terms of economy. And when you think about your careers and what's going to happen in the world, and you want to compete, this is going to be the toughest competition ever. So remember who you service. Whether it's global or domestic, doesn't matter. Customers first, employees second, shareholders. But they all deserve your respect. And you're last on the list. Last. You're absolutely last. I always like to end with a story about my son, who's in engineering second year at McGill right now. And he didn't even get it. In grade 11, I told him, I said, listen, I've got news for you. You're not getting any of my money, okay? I'm going to help you get out of school, but when this is over, you're on your own. And that's when he got the joke and he started saying, ooh, this is a problem. And I said, well, maybe you should try and pick a career. It happened to be engineering for him, and he went off to do that. But my dad, my stepdad you saw in that video, is now 85, lives alone. My mother's dead in Geneva. So we go over to see him all the time. And I tell this story whenever I finish because it's so profound to me to watch the change in this fellow. And I'm proud that he's my son that's figured this out. But we're getting on a plane in Boston. We're flying over to Geneva. And I've always said to him, while you're living at home, I'll pay for it. That's the beauty. I always say to entrepreneurs, listen, you don't do it for money. It's not about greed. It's about personal freedom. The reason you want to be an entrepreneur is to be able to do whatever you want with your time anytime you want. That's the whole idea, is to set yourself free to pursue the dreams you have. It happens to be you need money to do that, but that's the derivative of the pursuit of freedom. So I can afford to take him over to Geneva every day if I want, and I do sometimes. Sometimes we go twice a week, sometimes we go once a month, or my daughter or my wife or whoever in the family wants to go visit George. One day we're getting on a plane, and Trevor's turning to the left and going down to the back of the plane. And he said to me, "Dad, why is it I always have to go sit in the back for this 6.5-hour flight to Zurich, and you get to sit in the front?" And I said, "Trevor, you don't have any money." Thank you very much, guys. Let's hear these pitches. Now we're going to have
Thanks,
some
Kevin,
fun.
very much. It's time to turn our attention to the student pitches, so we invite you to have a seat. And
Okay.
we're going to invite, one of our distinct privileges in the Jiggo Center for Entrepreneurship is to work very closely with our student entrepreneurs, whether they have their own ideas for startups or they're interested in the funding of new ventures. We love to work with them and get to know them. So we've picked 3 of our top student entrepreneurs to pitch to you this evening. But first, we thought it might be fun to take a little trip down memory lane. And we want to feature a bit of a Where Are They Now feature to bring you up to date on one of the teams that you heard from us during your last visit here in November of 2014.
Hey Fed, why do you think we won that pitch event at Notre Dame? Was it because we had this awesome idea for a social investing app?
Now you're talking.
No, probably not.
Maybe it was because we threw $100 worth of pennies all over the stage.
Definitely not.
Oh, it had to have been the shoes.
Nice shoes.
Thank you. Haven't taken them off since.
Well, since then, we won 4 awards at Notre Dame's business plan competition, moved to Silicon Valley and got into the same startup accelerator where PayPal and Google started, got 20,000 beta signups, and closed $300,000 for only 15% of our company.
I like it. I'll give you $50,000 for 50%.
Don't worry, Mr. Wonderful. We all make mistakes.
You know, it's just amazing that we built Grain from nothing to help people start investing earlier. Now students all over the country are investing alongside of each other, building their own portfolios using our super simple stock market search engine.
So, Kevin, if you're still interested in joining the Grain team, or just want to chat and get some fashion advice, you can reach me here.
All right, it's time for the pitches to begin. As I introduce each team, if you'll just walk across, we're ready for our first team. Elephant in the room. Kylie Wilcox is a senior from Swansea. Head on over, ladies. Kylie Wilcox is a senior from Swansea, Massachusetts. Her co-founder is Alexandra Julian, a senior from Elmhurst, Illinois. Allie and Kylie are both studying mechanical engineering.
Hello, my name is Kylie Wilcox.
And my name is Allie Julian, and we are the co-founders of Elephant in the Room, a social media app that allows students to pose questions to their peers anonymously regarding mental health.
Mental health is a huge and growing issue on college campuses. Every year, more than 1,000 college students commit suicide.
Many students struggle with academic pressure, among other mental health issues, and often feel alone in their problems. As college seniors, we understand firsthand the struggles that students experience. While university counseling centers have amazing resources, the stigma surrounding mental health often prevents students from receiving the help that they need.
After extensive research, we realized that the resources available to college students are not available in a medium they feel comfortable using, and we wanted to find a way to make them more approachable for the millennial generation. Currently, the most prominent resources involve face-to-face interaction or calling a hotline. As students, we know how uncomfortable and intimidating that can be. Social media, however, is something we use every day, multiple times a day.
Elephant in the Room allows students to pose personal questions without fear of judgment by posting in an anonymous forum. They can receive advice from their peers who have been through similar situations, and they have 24/7 access to this network at their fingertips.
University counseling centers see firsthand the damaging effects of mental health problems, especially if they go untreated. Having these trained professionals monitor the app gives them exclusive access into the mental well-being of students on their campus, which was previously unattainable.
Universities can license use of the app for a minimum yearly fee of $3,500, making the app available
I
on
was
their
waiting for
campus.
the part when you make money. Okay, so you're going to license it to the institution that uses the platform?
Yes.
And they're going to pay you, why?
They can license use of the app for a minimum fee of $3,500. That will make the app available on their campus and free for student use. In addition, they will receive data on what their students are posting that they wouldn't have been able to receive before.
So they can target their students with more necessary resources. So if they know a lot of people are struggling with depression, they can have better resources available for the students.
How are you going to deal with the privacy issues on this? If you're going to really try and help somebody? Oh. Yeah, put that away. That's a bad one that's ringing. So let's talk about this. If people, they want to engage, they know it's anonymous, but in order to help them, you have to find out who they are. When do you make that switch? Because if I'm really pouring out my soul because I know it's anonymous and I'm getting that discourse or with somebody else, that's great. But now you want somebody to help me. How do I switch over to where I'm not breaching privacy?
It's primarily peer-to-peer. So our whole concept is that it's campus specific. So you can post, say, I'm really worried about my friend. I think she might be in an abusive relationship, for example. And someone who's been in that same situation can respond. And that person who's responding could be someone you walk by every day on the quad. So we want to keep it as anonymous as possible for students with the issue that if...
Okay, but you want a professional to engage this person, somebody who's maybe going off into a dark, dark place where their life could be at risk, right? Mm-hmm. How do you get their name?
If someone posts on the site, if they want to harm themselves or others, we reserve the right to send their...
an IP address where it was posted. But that's if someone wants to harm themselves
when they sign up,
or
they're
harm
giving
others.
you the right to...
That's an extreme case, and it would have to be obtained from a warrant from
who
local
curates
police.
the ones that are getting into a dark place?
The University Counseling Center. So students are able to flag posts that they deem as threatening themselves or others, and that notification gets immediately sent to the counseling center.
The counseling center will be monitoring the site at all times.
You know, it's a great service. I just don't know if it shouldn't be provided by the institution for free. I don't know if it's a business. I think it's a service. I mean, was your intention to make money with this?
We hope that by licensing it to other universities, that would be how we make money off of it primarily. But we think that by expanding across the nation, schools are going to be able to compare how many students are using their resources to the national average. So you're not just getting data on your school, but schools across the country as well.
It's free for student use. The universities are paying, and then the students are using the app for free.
You know, it's interesting. That's how Facebook got started, was peer-to-peer on university college campuses. But you're basically trying to take time away from social media into a far more serious curation to say that, look, I've got problems, I want to share them with somebody else. I think it's interesting. I think it's very hard to make money with. You know, it's a very interesting idea. If you could actually get traction on this campus and prove that it worked, maybe the trouble is you can't sell advertising in an educational institution. The biggest driver of profit on any time you gather eyeballs is to sell advertising. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to have an altruistic motivation and do this for free, prove it out that you could make it work, and then do something else for profit. I've tried so many times to go into the educational space and advertise to people that are being curated on an educational institution. That just can't be done. Look, I like it, but I don't see it making money, sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
It's better than saying it's bad.
All right, up next is Touch Base, a team co-founded by two freshmen, also known as the two Katies.
Remember what I said earlier about women entrepreneurs? Let's just bypass the guys completely. That's it. Okay, great, hit me.
Katie McEachen is from Lake Zurich, Illinois, majoring in neuroscience and behavior. Katie Brown is from Greenway, Wisconsin, a finance major in the College of Business.
All right.
Hi, I'm Katie Pinguckin. This is my partner, Katie Brown, and we are here with TouchBase, an online resource that allows undergraduate students and young alumni to connect with older, wiser alumni in an efficient and effective manner. TouchBase, through mentor-mentee pairing, forums, and profiles, creates a concentrated pool of people with the knowledge and wisdom that can be provided to people who need it the most.
Before we pursued this idea, we decided to conduct a series of interviews to see how students currently connect with alumni. And we found that there are two avenues that they use. First, they utilize their personal connections, their family, friends, professors, or even their LinkedIn connections. But the real problem with this is that it's a very lengthy process to actually reach out to alumni, and once you do get in contact with them, there's no guarantee that they will want to help you. So the second resource they can utilize is their career center at their university. But these career centers are more focused on placing students in jobs rather than creating those valuable networking opportunities.
TouchBase alleviates these issues that Katie has mentioned through the variety of aspects. The first being profiles. Everyone on the app would have a profile with their major companies they've worked at, trials and tribulations they've had, and areas of expertise. For those that want to participate, there's mentor and mentee pairing for long-term help with a specific individual. For more general questions, there's forums that would create small communities on the app. There's also a job board for job and internship postings, and a calendar with university and local events.
What's my motivation as an alumni to do this, to spend my time? Can I use it as a recruiting tool? Can I start to explore relationships with people in curriculums and in disciplines that I want to hire? I mean, why would I do it otherwise?
Absolutely. So a big part of it is job recruiting and also getting contact with alumni that could also help you in your business. So it's alumni to alumni in addition to alumni to students. And also alumni love passing on the knowledge that they've gained, so it's also that aspect as well.
So if I'm an alumni and I'm working at a financial institution, can I post to everybody saying I'm looking to hire this qualified person? I mean, because the social mentoring piece, I get it, but that's not really a motivator for a busy executive alumni person to say, gee, I'd love to find, I want to burn more time. I get it if you're retired, but if you're actively in commerce, you have no time anyways. What's the benefit for doing this, is my question.
You're reaching a large group of people very quickly.
But I'm doing it for altruistic reasons, or I'm doing it because I want to find the right candidate for my posting before the recruiters get them?
I think it's a combination of both. So as you said in your PowerPoint, that it's very important to give back, and that's what I think a lot of people do feel. So not only is it that altruistic feeling, but it's also you're reaching out to people who you know are qualified. You attended that university and you have faith in them. So just knowing that they went there, that's going to be reason enough for you.
You want the alumni of Mendoza to say, look, I'm going to go right back to where I graduated, tell them I've got 5 jobs in this area, and because there's a connection through alumni, they're going to come to me before they go to the other recruiters that are trying to hire them.
Absolutely.
Is that the thesis?
Right.
Yes.
I don't know. Not sure I'm loving it.
And we can really prove that there is a need for this. There's a lot of people who are looking for those alumni connections.
Are you planning to make money with this?
Yes. So how we would make money is we would charge the school an annual subscription fee, and we realized
the school is going to give you that?
Yes, the school would pay because they would realize that when you, it's actually very beneficial for them. So when the school pays for this, they're going to get multiple benefits. So it's going to bring.
Optimistic, I must say.
It's going to bring back that community feel, but moreover, it's going to increase their university endowments, as well as increasing their metrics, such as job placement percentages. So that's really where they're going to get the main benefit.
And today, 70% of jobs and internships are garnered through networking. So making this easier for universities, students, and alumni to all connect with each other is really beneficial.
I'm trying to figure out why this is different than LinkedIn, because there's a whole community of Mendoza grads, they're there already. They have all the platform, and they can brand it any way they want. They've already got all the data, and they've got millions of other people too. Why are you going to get any traction with this?
Right, and LinkedIn is more for people to connect who are in jobs already. People who sign up for LinkedIn don't necessarily sign up to...
You don't have a LinkedIn profile now while you're in school. You're making a big mistake.
I do have one.
Yes, I know you do.
But the key...
So, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. This is going to zero with a bullet. I'm sorry. I don't think it's going to get any traction. Listen, the good news is you haven't really put any money into it yet, right? Correct. I'm so happy. Okay, listen, let's work on something else. This is not going to work. It's just, you're competing in something that's already happened and that's already got scale and critical mass. And you're not differentiating enough, because if it's just for altruistic, let's stay in touch stuff, everybody, I'm assuming, gets a lifetime email address from this institution, as every institution provides. And you can, often just post to the university's website and say, I would like to talk to anybody who graduated in, 96 or whatever. That happens already. I'm sure you can do that now. But you're putting in an additional amount of work. No, I really hate it. That's what, I'm sorry. I hate it a lot now that I think about it. The more I think about it, the more I hate it. So thanks for coming, though.
Thank you.
All right, last but certainly not least, we will hear from Lucho Escobar, founder of Teque Blends. Lucho is a senior from Guayaquil, Ecuador, and he is majoring in economics.
Okay.
So Ecuador produces 25% of the world's bananas and a lot of other tropical fruits. But 25% of the fruits are wasted because of cosmetic standards. So for example, if a banana is slightly too long or too short, it is thrown away before reaching markets. What I do is that I take these fruits, I buy them at very low prices, I mix them with superfood ingredients, and I make a meal replacement blend. Every Takai has the ideal proportion of macronutrients to replace a perfect meal and to reach your fitness goals. It is very simple to use. You just add your favorite choice of milk and blend it. My target customers are mainly upper middle class women that have a fast and healthy lifestyle. I started Takai last semester in my kitchen with my younger brother. We sell a box of 6 units for $25 and deliver it to your home on a weekly basis. We reach our customers mainly through social media and by partnering with nutritionists. We have sold already 1,000 boxes, and our goal is to bring Takai to the US. Our advisors include the former vice president of Dole. Our main competition is called Daily Harvest, which started last year and has already 4 million in sales, despite they sell each box at $50. However, we have clear competitive advantages. First, we can source our ingredients at extremely low costs. We have low labor costs of production. We have a US utility patent that allows us to offer a faster blending experience for our customers.
Say that again. What's the patent?
The patent. Okay, so it will take me a little bit of time to explain.
But what is it about the packaging, or is it about?
Yes, it's about the container.
The container. Okay.
I can explain it. So what happens is that when you take frozen fruits and you put them together, they tend to stick to each other, right? So right now, what people are doing is called IQF. So they freeze the fruit separately, and then they put it together. But for example, if you were going to buy Takai in a Whole Foods, and you took it out of the freezer to pay and take it home, the fruit would melt, and then when you put it back in the freezer back home, it sticks together. So you wake up the next morning and try to blend your smoothie to go for work, and it's all stick together. So it's.
Is this for smoothies only, or can I eat it? Like, is this just to make a smoothie?
No. So you can take it in 2 ways. You can add milk and drink it as a smoothie.
Right.
Or you can add milk and yogurt and it tastes like ice cream, but it's.
After I let it defrost.
No. You just blend it. You add. So let me finish explaining my patent.
Well, you got to be able to answer my questions anytime I ask them.
Yes, of course.
So this is a frozen banana. It's not easy to eat a solid.
Yes, you have to blend it.
Okay, so do I have to, if I'm going to eat it out of this with a spoon, do I wait till this defrosts?
No, you don't need to. Oh, yeah, you have to. If you want to eat it, you have to wait.
But you don't want me to eat this. You want me to put it in a blender and blend it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because.
And is this more economic for me than just buying some bananas and putting them in a blender myself?
Not necessarily, but it has tropical ingredients, and it comes pre-measured to meet your fitness goals. So, for example, if you're a woman and you want to be slim, that has exactly the number of calories, fiber, protein,
So
healthy
I
fats.
see it's got coconut, which I may not want to do myself. So what does this cost?
In Ecuador, $25 a box
What
of
does it cost
6.
me as a consumer here?
Here in the US, $30.
This?
No, not one, a box of 6. I sell a box of 6 and I take it to your home on a weekly basis.
Okay, so if you want to scale this, you're going to FedEx it to me in a frozen container, right? With dry ice?
I'm gonna send a container from Ecuador, and then when I send it home, I want to start in New York City.
From Ecuador, you're going to send it frozen?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I've already talked with people that, like, for example, the
But
dole.
think about it. Why wouldn't you send the ingredients to a co-packer in the country so you don't have to go through customs with a frozen product?
Yes, that's like my long-term plan, but at the moment, I have co-packers in Ecuador that are like people I trust, so I would rather start with them. Also, like I can be there and supervise.
It cost me $30 to get 6, including shipping?
Including shipping, yes.
And it comes frozen to me.
It comes frozen.
Do you have any sales?
In Ecuador, yes. Here in the US, no.
But they don't, in Ecuador, you're shipping to them also?
Frozen, yes.
You know, I'm intrigued because there's a couple of examples of companies that are using frozen concentrated plants to do, they call them veggie pucks, and I'm actually using them now because somebody pitched me on it for energy, and I tried it. It works. You know, it's not a boost drink. It's just great vegetables, and I stick 2 pucks in a blender in the morning. I buy a bunch of them frozen, and I just blend them up. Although they have compressed it to a much smaller size, so their shipping cost. What bothers me about this is half this is empty, so you've made a very high volume container, or is this just a prototype or something?
That's a prototype. The thing is, so my patent puts a separator in between that, and that takes space, but it has a value added that when you wake up in the morning, you just take it out and
Could a
blend
business
quickly.
like this work and send fresh tropical ingredients that I could blend? Yes, but there's nothing proprietary about this, okay? I mean, anybody can do this.
The
right?
patent.
So my problem is, it's the best operator with the lowest customer acquisition costs that has the lowest cost that's going to win, right?
I think I have to explain more the patent. So the thing is,
I'm not excited about the patent.
Okay,
Really,
it's all right.
because this is frozen bananas, and so I could package it in a shrink wrap package. It doesn't really have to come in this because you're not storing it in retail in the frozen counter.
but you can use that to take it on the go on the next day. So
Yeah, but so could a frozen. I mean, I'm not. You know, I see a lot of problem. I see what you're doing, and it maybe could work, but you know,
it is working right now in the US. Like there's someone who's selling $4 million a year in their first year. I think I could get a lot lower costs for the inputs I have to make, and also I have the patent.
Yeah, no, I'm not. This is not a zero. It's got potential because people are looking for healthy alternatives. And I assume you have other mixes. Is this something else?
Yes, I have 7 flavors. That one's guava. Has guava, strawberries, walnuts, flax
Okay,
seeds,
that's
bananas.
cool. That's cool. Guava is not something I'm going to find easily.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. You know, maybe, but I think you have a lot of work to do on the packaging. Anytime there's any wasted air, that you're basically paying more packaging costs. I don't know why this couldn't come in a freeze-dried or, you know, vacuum-packed frozen package and then lower your cost dramatically and maybe ship more. Like what I found about the puck business, I pay, I think, $80 a month to get a lot of pucks. So I only do it once a month. I get a purple one and a green one. I don't know what's in them. I don't care. But you know, they arrive and I use them, and I'm used to it now. So every month I pay that $80. I would try and get a higher price point on these. You know what? I like it. It's not horrible, but you're so
Thanks.
early stage. I mean, you got to prove some revenue. How are you going to acquire customers? How's anybody going to hear about this?
So in Ecuador, I just...
Not Ecuador.
Okay,
You wanna do
here,
it here.
I'm
So
planning...
now you're ready to ship.
Yes,
Not one person here has ever heard of this.
exactly. So I take this product to Whole Foods, and I basically stay there for 4 hours. I hire people to this. For example, in Manhattan, there are 10 Whole Foods. and I could do this in 5 Whole Foods.
You're doing this now?
I'm not doing it because I haven't brought my product to the US,
But
right?
you have to go through the, we get a lot of Shark Tank deals with food goods, frozen and dried and everything else, and we have a great relationship with Whole Foods, but you're gonna get a regional test, maybe 25 stores. Then you gotta go through that 6 months, then you gotta get into their system, and you gotta prove that you can supply them. I mean, this would be a Whole Foods product. You know, it's not a horrible idea. It's you know, yeah, it's about time for that bell, I'd say. This one's all about executional skill. It's all about whether you can execute and get a team together to get this product, drive the cost down, get market share, figure out your customer acquisition costs. Whole Foods is retail. Retail's tough. I don't know why this isn't just online and get people to take delivery and frozen product and tell the story, through social media. The only other thing I would say that's negative, frozen products are tough, really tough, because you're always keeping them at that,
Minus 18.
Yeah. That is expensive. That's expensive. You can't get freezer space in retail. Whole Foods, to give you freezer space, that's really hard. It's really hard.
I have estimated how much would it cost, and I think I could get a 40% margin by selling the box at $30.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a 6.25 out of 10. It's sort of interesting. It's not a 0, but it's a tough road.
It's all right.
It's a
Thanks.
tough road,
Thanks for your advice.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks for All right, I think we'd all agree that a hallmark of a successful entrepreneur is courage and a willingness to take a bit of a risk. So join me in thanking these students for pitching. And Kevin, we certainly appreciate how busy you are, and we are very grateful for your time. He spent an entire hour with the students who competed for the opportunity to get on stage and had plenty of time for their questions, and we're grateful for your time. Thank you
very much.
Very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
So just a little thank you from Notre Dame to Kevin. Again, super generous with his time for the students. A couple of things there to hopefully member Mendoza College of Business.
Thank you very
University of
much.
Notre Dame.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.